And we're live, streaming with the footsteps of New York City. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and thank you so much for joining us for our unique podcast community. Thank you for helping us grow. We hit 1,760 subscribers yesterday, and we grow every day thanks to people like you. So please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and podcasts. We love it when you like and share our videos as it helps our community grow and bring you the best artists. Here on Music Matters, we have artists from the classical and the contemporary genres, and we look at innovations and self-discoveries made during challenging times. We have a wonderful artist today. We have a violin soloist and a real entrepreneur. We have Ada Witczyk coming in from London, and we're delighted she can join us. Welcome, Ada.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
My pleasure as well. I discovered of your work through Instagram, and I'm really happy I did because you're doing such an interesting mix of high-level Baroque performing, and also you have your foot in the modern world as well.
Yeah, it's been definitely a really exciting journey, and the social media world these days really allows us to connect with people like yourself and people from everywhere. It's so fascinating to be able to talk and, discover people who love music and who are happy to follow the journey.
It is amazing the amount of connection we can have with people across the globe, and I think it's making all of our lives way more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you always know you wanted to be an artist?
Oh, that's a funny one. So the family too oftenly repeated legend says that when I was three, I have seen this pop violinist at the times, Vanessa May, who was really popular in 90s. And ever since, I've just asked for the violin. I didn't stop for about 4 years. And in Poland, when I was born, we started the music school at about age of 8, and I didn't stop until then, really. So they finally said, "Okay, we're gonna get you one violin."
So you started at age 8?
Yes, it's pretty late. I think nowadays the kids go to school when they're 6, but when I was young, we were starting school about age 7 or 8.
And do you come from a musical family?
Not at all, really. Nobody's a musician in my family, so you can call me a black sheep.
Wonderful. It's just fascinating. We have so many different guests on, and there's everyone's comes from a different place. And for you, someone like myself, also, my father worked at a power plant. My mother was a homemaker who played the piano a little bit at school, at church, at Sunday school, and but wasn't a professional. And it's different when your parents are not in the field. You kind of have to make your own way.
Yes, I often think it might be slightly easier in some ways for people who would be coming from music families, but I also appreciate the angle of understanding or maybe coming to classical music from people who've never come across it before. And I often try to think, what would my folks say? Because they haven't been, exposed to classical music. So it's good to have that knowledge, how you can encourage people more.
Absolutely. So when you started playing the violin at 8, did you take to it very quickly, naturally?
I think I always have been really lucky with really enthusiastic teachers. And because I was born in this really small town in Poland and the classical music scene wasn't maybe that big, but the teachers were really committed and really warm. And in this community, they would just try and do everything they could for the students. So I remember my teacher would just, pack all four of us students into the car, and he would just drive us to different competitions, sometimes 8 or 10 every year, like all different corners of the country. So I think I was really lucky that he was so enthusiastic because you can really feel it as a child, really.
We all need those mentors to guide our even the most talented need those mentors to show us what's possible.
Yes, absolutely. Because then you feel the energy and you're like, yes, I really want to do it. I want to be like my teacher.
And you did a lot of your training in Poland. Now you also went to London. When did you first go to London?
So by the time I was finishing music boarding school in Poznan when I was 18, I first had to audition for Royal College of Music, even before doing Polish A levels. And then having got into college, then I finished my education. And then so I went for my bachelor and I've never left ever since.
Come to the big city. London's always been a draw for classical music from the time of Handel on, certainly, and Haydn, and a lot of my German greats who couldn't wait to go to England because of the vibrancy of the music scene. So, what was it like going from the Polish and then coming all the way to England? What's it like being immersed in the London scene?
Definitely challenging, especially even in Poland, we study English with American lectures. So even the accent was a new thing to me. But it was so inspiring to be able to go to concert and see almost famous artists perform. And it was like one big adventure, really. And as a student, you could meet people studying also from everywhere, people studying all languages you can think of, and just learn from one another. It was really great.
What a great atmosphere to be in as a young artist and surrounded by the greats, and to you go to the London Symphony, obviously, and just have it's like being, for me, it's like being in New York City. I grew up in the suburbs of New York, but whenever I go to New York, I've got the access to the Metropolitan Opera or the New York Philharmonic and the colleagues I've worked with over the years, and it's just great to be in these great, like, musical environments.
Yes, like every day is a lesson. I mean, even today, you can go, you can explore, and you can listen to new type of music or new angle to the music. It's really great.
Now, you've gravitated towards Baroque music. When did you discover your love of this type of repertoire?
Um, I think by the time I was halfway through my bachelor at the Royal College of Music, I remember that day when I was learning this piece of Bach with my teacher. And even so, I was, doing everything he asked me with every single note as he wanted to. The music really wasn't coming alive, and I was like, I'm doing everything I can. How is it so that the music kind of still sounds so serious, so, very important? And then I heard a colleague of mine, and they had this Baroque bow, and I was like, hang on, but this music comes alive. How is it possible that this music is dancing? And someone told me, well, she also studies Baroque violin, and I was like, what, violin? As soon as I could, I just like run to the Department of Historical Performance and I just picked it up as a second study. And I couldn't believe, like, I've studied violin for more than 20 years now, but there was this different way of playing, like completely different world.
It's fascinating when you hear, whenever I've done authentic, historically informed performance practice, and you hear with a Baroque bow, and then you hear with gut strings, and you get such a different sound. It's like it doesn't have the piercing quality, but it didn't need to back then because the halls were not as big.
Yes, they would absolutely help the instruments that were built for them. But even forgetting all the structural differences and what violin has and the other doesn't, I think yesterday I was listening to your podcast with this beautiful tenor, and he was describing how when you create the voice, it's all about placing it really. So with the violin, it's the same thing. We just use the muscles in our arms. So just a different way of projecting. And by the way the instrument reacts to it, suddenly like you have this new palette of colors that just like a new thing to it.
Yeah, it's always a great when you hear the great Baroque ensembles. And you've played with many of the real greatest in the world, the Gabrieli Concert, the English Concert, the Academy of Ancient Music. These are some of my favorite groups, and it must be so exciting to partner up with these ensembles.
I've been definitely very lucky to be able to learn from my colleagues who, they know what they're doing and they're so fantastic and they're always such an inspiration. So I've been very lucky.
What are some of your favorite pieces you've gotten to perform at this point in your career?
Oh wow, there is so many, but I really love these big orchestra works like St. John's Passion and even Handel's Messiah every December, even though you play it so many times, it always feels like now it's Christmas. This is what makes it Christmassy, and they're such great works.
It's so interesting with Handel's Messiah. I just did a whole run of them, as I do every year, or at least I always do the Hallelujah Chorus. And, often I'll perform it with my university choir, and it's so different in performance practice. I always have to tell them, like, it was originally sung by boys who sang the soprano and the alto parts, and it was a tiny performance. There was a very small choir in a very intimate place. This it was a fundraiser for a hospital, I believe, it was a fundraiser for some sort of was it an orphanage or something like that. It was a very small occasion, and even the hall that it was done was very tiny. So when we think of these grandiose performances like that, are done with 300 voice choruses with very large symphony orchestras, I just find it fascinating how this piece has such enduring power, and I think there's validity in both ways of performing it.
Yes, absolutely. And it's the same thing if you think of Four Seasons by Vivaldi. Like, even though he was so lucky that he had all these great students he's been writing this music for, but it definitely, the setting has changed also, and the way how we approach it nowadays and how we play it, even the energy to it. Like, it's really interesting.
I just love looking at Vivaldi. The more I study Vivaldi, the more interested I become. How his orchestra, the Ospedale della Pietà, became probably one of the most acclaimed orchestras in Europe at the time. Meanwhile, it was mostly women, young girls, who were trained from the youngest age. That whole situation with the Ospedale is just fascinating to me. And one of my friends wrote an opera about it. It's really interesting. They weren't seen. They were played behind a scrim, so you couldn't see them, because a lot of these people were the illegitimate children of the aristocracy.
Yeah, but actually, what a great thing that he did, because it is such a story. It is also such a gossip. Like, well done for him. He wrote an opera on it. Wow.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and and a lot of the instruments that these young women played, they were not quote unquote female instruments at the time, but it was kind of revolutionary that they did, and it's just a fantastic story and context for these works.
Yeah. Also, if you think so, when they were so busy and giving concerts, like, when did he write so many of these pieces for them? That's incredible. The amount of works created, honestly.
Yeah, there wasn't this repertoire. They didn't do as much repertoire as we have today. Like, we have to learn that volumes of repertoire. They wrote a lot of their own.
Yeah, well, that's incredible.
Bach and Vivaldi. I did a concert of Bach and Vivaldi just this past, and the inspiration of Vivaldi on Bach is quite noticeable, because he arranged 6 of his violin concertos for harpsichord and for organ. And he through doing that at his one of his first court appointments, he absorbed the Italian style, and it kind of that was made. But to me, it makes Bach so special. As he was a great absorber of all the national styles, and then through his own unique genius.
Yeah, they absolute pleasure to play as well. I mean, it's so much fun. It's so much flair, and the music it's easy to play because it's so good, almost.
Yeah, a lot of the times, when I conduct Puccini, I always tell the singers, you have to just read. He's so careful about notating; it's all there.
Yeah.
He gives you every stage instruction. I mean, Puccini is so specific. If you do what he says, you're going to be okay. We have less of that in Baroque music, though, right? Because there was not the instructions, the detailed instructions weren't invented in the music yet. You'll just get piano forte. There wasn't fortissimo often. There wasn't a lot of these kind of clarifying marks. So how do you as a performer fill in the blanks when sometimes the composers didn't have that?
I think that always the starting point is the harmony. This is where you get your ideas, directions from. You can create colors based on this. And then once you follow these, yes, you have lots of freedom. So you can, sometimes you can almost just help the music slightly, but as long as you go with harmonies and you listen to your colleagues, and you know it's all one big chamber music, I often think, even though if you play a concerto, as long as you react to the woodwind, or you listen to bass parts, it all comes alive, much easier.
I tell my colleagues when we're doing Tchaikovsky or Brahms, I say, this is chamber music. Make sure it's just as important that you're listening as following. It's all part of the what makes it so special, but it's especially important in Baroque music, and I guess any music, but Baroque music is so chamber-based.
Yes, I never forget when I was studying the Beethoven violin concerto before performing it in London with my one of my great teachers, Levin Schillingerian. And once I've learned on the notes, that he said, "Okay, so now let's talk about what the music is about." You know, the score was on the table, and we're just simply following. Okay, here you're having conversation with the flute, and it's all chamber music, and then the music sparkles, right, when you're having the conversation.
That's everything in Beethoven's just conversation with your sections, and that's what makes I love concerto conducting because I love to partner up with the virtuoso and kind of feel what their energy is, and then bring that to the orchestra and kind of bring these together. It's this kind of it's a lot like opera conducting to me. I've done a lot of opera conducting, and it's this kind of listening and following at the same time, and then sometimes it's like dancing. It's like ballroom dancing. There's this back and forth kind of thought to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, do you regularly go back and forth to more romantic repertoire? And do you have different violins you use for that?
I have two types of violins. I have my own Baroque violin that I use for Baroque setting, which is kind of late-ish Baroque. So I also use it for classical repertoire, for which then I use different bow. And then I've been kindly offered a modern violin on loan, which is a beautiful Italian instrument that has metal strings on chin rest and all these toys, and I use it for modern playing.
So you have best of both worlds. So when you use your Baroque, tell us about your Baroque violin. I love to talk to violinists about their instruments, and I have friends who play Stradivari instruments, and I have one of New York's great luthiers has been on the show. He repairs and he creates new modern violins, and I'm just fascinated by the topic. And I love the movie The Red Violin. We talk about that too, but but it is fascinating the connection between the players and the instruments that actually were around during the Baroque period. Tell us about yours.
When I was just about to finish my postgraduate studies at the academy, I had to give the violin I was using to the owner, and then I started thinking, well, how do I obtain one violin? So I went to the auction, and then sometimes at the auctions you can find some nice finds that need a bit of repairing. They are a bit more, a bit cheaper. You can afford it with a small loan or something. And then I had it baroqued. So the instrument comes from Paris, from 1790. So it was a properly dated instrument, but over the years it had been modernized. So basically the violin maker had to make it as it used to be before those modern changes. So, he had to change everything, starting from bass bar within the instrument, how the neck was fitted to the instrument is also differently. Then it changes the angle of the instrument, and then it will respond better to the lower tension of the gut
Hmm,
string. So it was quite a
fascinating.
big operation.
How long did it take to do those type of repairs and changes?
Ooh, almost 5 months, I think.
Yeah, I would think so. It's so complicated, I asked the luthiers I've had on the show. I asked, I was just fascinated by the care it takes to do the work on these instruments, and my friend who plays a Stradivarius, he plays concertmaster for me often. He'll give, I'm like, do you want to hold this? I'm like, absolutely not. Those
Yeah.
instruments are so rare and so valuable. I don't even want to be near it. I love to hear the sounds though, the colors that it can make, and I'm always interested with the luthiers, and I'll sit down and say, I'd love to hear the same phrase played on different instruments because it just tells me so much. There's just such different sonic signatures on these instruments.
hmm Also, I believe that every violin has a different soul to it. So there's no two same violins, and you cannot make the same sound on two different instruments, which also makes it, more interesting.
Hmm. And how many did you immediately fall in love with the new instrument that you when you purchased this instrument and you started playing it?
I did try a few instruments then, and this one particularly, it's like when you fall in love, when the second you make a sound, you see that there is this undiscovered possibilities for the sound to change. And there is this depth of sound, and somehow also everybody is different. So we all have different hands and will prefer different kind of instruments. So I was very happy I actually found that one. because it could be quite tricky. Like you can spend months searching for something.
It's amazing. I just love this combination of actual instrument and player, and you can't replace how important the player is, but the right instrument can make a very big difference in the sound. Finally,
Absolutely, it can inspire you. Um, it can also give you the confidence when you're playing something because you know it's gonna respond when you try and create some kind of sound. It can change a lot.
and let's talk about your modern instrument. I'm amazed by how good some of the modern instruments are. In fact, there's been some blind studies where they'll take like a couple Stradivarius, and a couple modern, and often people cannot tell the difference,
Yes, I know.
or so they say.
I think that we have such beautiful violin makers, and there's so many talented people out there who really love what they're doing. That the first violin that my parents bought me when I was still in Poland, my baby violin, it was made by a Polish modern maker. And I went to competitions with this violin. I got into my studies and it's really reliable. The sound it's great. It's just like a different character to instruments who are slightly older. So it's like having a conversation with someone from a different city, like they have a different story to it.
Certainly. And have you seen the red violin?
Oh yeah, I might have seen this a few years ago, but I still remember. And definitely, David Gareth, he has a sparkle when he plays. Like he can really play well.
I just love the story of one of these ancient instruments, like these Baroque instruments, as they go through the centuries and the different people play them. And that is true. I mean, an instrument that has that much depth. I mean, there's definitely something there that it makes it special that it's been through all these different periods. We study these periods, but it's actually been there in the hand of artists.
I know. If only it could speak, right? So the violin that I have from the foundation is actually a Cremonese Italian instrument, but because it says nothing inside and because there isn't any specific sign to who it could make, I can only wonder, who's been playing on it, who actually made it. Was it like a student of someone really good, or you just never know. But it's a really beautiful instrument, though.
It's just fascinating, and I just love this topic. I always ask the players who I work with, tell me about your instrument. They just talk, and I just love to hear the stories.
Yes, we definitely love our violins.
It's like falling in love all over again. I just love that kind of romance between the player and the instrument. So tell me about the competition you founded, and have you always also, like, I know you're absorbed into a lot of Baroque performance. When has modern music always played an important role in your compositional and your performing career?
I think I've been definitely very lucky that when I was studying at college, I had some opportunities. I've been exposed to working with composers. And I think what I found fascinating was that you could actually ask the questions and get an answer.
Without an Ouija board, right?
Yeah. And they could be one piece that's been created just for you, and they could make it more suitable for you, or they could help you tell the story they would like to tell through their music. And I think with the competition, when the pandemic started, um, I've come across this book about this Czech harpsichordist, Zuzana Růžičková, who, having not only survived 3 concentration camps and lost the feel in her fingers, she's been so strong. She's become so successful, and through her strength and passion and love for music, she's achieved great things. So then she went into recording all Bach solo as a, not only first woman, but first person ever who would have recorded them all.
What an achievement.
They're so fantastic. And because her husband was a modern composer, he, as a wedding present, he offered her a concerto for harpsichord. And then she became really interested in modern music for Baroque instruments. And once she started describing it, I simply thought, oh my goodness, this resonates with me so much. And then by the time, as we all had a bit of downtime during first lockdown, I had that one day, then I said, okay, that's enough. That's enough of watching Netflix. That's enough of scrolling through Instagram. I'm gonna do something. I
We've all
think,
been there. Yeah, we've all been there. It's like it's time to be creative again. I was supposed to be making debuts in a lot of different places, and I was supposed to do 5 different countries. I was making debuts in my 2020s in the spring, and all of them got scrapped. And I did about a month of yard work and Netflix and other things as I was finishing up my teaching, and then I started doing the podcast. I missed my colleagues. I missed talking to colleagues. I missed the interchange of ideas between people from all over, and it's amazing what we can do when we're forced to be creative.
yeah, and what a fantastic thing you have created. You connect people through your podcast and you share those stories. And I think I also felt that, it's not only me sitting on my couch, and it's not only you, it's everybody going through exactly the same thing. And I was like, okay, right. Since there was absolutely no support for creative from the government, I'm going to do something for people just like me. And we simply, with my partner and with Swiss director Simon Helbling, we've created the competition to just do something for people when everybody felt like we cannot do anything. And then we were so surprised with the positive outcome, and we had so many people sending the beautiful new pieces for, at that time, first competition for Baroque violin and harpsichord. We've been absolutely overwhelmed. And then the competition just we organized it once more, and we altogether created 5 new films for Baroque instruments, which is also a way of us trying to connect with new audiences.
What an incredible way to bring life into the old and the new simultaneously. It's so fascinating a combination to hear. There's so much interest in modern harpsichord and modern Baroque violin. I think it's just a really interesting way to keep this alive and current. And
Thank you so much. I am definitely over the moon that people are liking the films so much. And I think the other half of the story is that when you think how things have developed through technology over the years, if you look into pop music, if you look into, American country music and jazz and so on, the promotion of these beautiful arts has moved on. Sometimes I slightly wonder whether classical music could learn slightly from the other fields. So we try to create a new way of sharing what we do with new audiences on their own terms. Because the social media, the Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, they give us these platforms. So we've tried to create something for people who wouldn't otherwise even listen to classical music. And I think I can't believe that, they're really reacting to it. And through this new art form, we're just trying to ask, well, why not? Like, what else could we do? Like, why
what
should we?
was it like when you opened up when you got to the stage when you're receiving these submissions from artists and composers all around the world? What was it like to play through them and to finally choose the winners? And what was it like to discover new voices?
It was definitely very exciting. Um, I felt a bit of responsibility because people put so much time and so much effort, and you can see it in front of you. It's so much hard work to create something. So I can definitely say that there are so many great works, and purely because of, like always, the financial difficulties. And, because we're not a big company, we've simply asked family and friends to donate a bit of money. We could only choose a little amount of works to turn them into movies. But people are so creative and definitely can create for Baroque instruments so beautifully.
So tell me about the creative process of putting film with new music. Did you partner up with a videographer, a director? It's a great synthesis of music and technology.
It all started when I was still a student, and I already felt like I would like to do something slightly different to share what I do. And I've reached out to a film school in London. I simply sent an email, and one person responded, and that was my friend Simon Helbing, a now acclaimed film director. And he was like, I love Baroque music. Sure, let's turn something. And we worked on Bieber's Rosary Sonata that now you can find on my YouTube channel. And that was how it all started. And through collaboration and through, again, a different artistic field, through filmmakers who know so much about what they do, about the lighting and the movement, it suddenly became this bigger thing.
And so you're an innovator in your field. You're bringing, you're combining these two new ideas, and it's so important. We have such a visual society. We talk about YouTube as I call this era, and I have a lot of conversations with indie artists, singer-songwriters, rock bands, and I'm fascinated by how they have almost this idea of access to your audience. We have so much more connectivity to our audience than was ever possible in the past.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess that could be one way to show what we do because classical musicians, we work so hard and the music is so beautiful and we put everything we have into it. I just simply feel like we can share it in many, many more new ways and perhaps collaborating with different artists it could be just one of the ways. And it's such a pleasure to, again, meet new people and learn from them as well.
What are some of the challenges in playing? Have some of these scores been really surprising and treat technique in a different way? Or what's it been like to learn these new scores?
Absolutely. With so many people sending their music from all different corners of the world, not only you get influences from their cultures, you also get people who some will write in a really Baroque way, and some will use the very modern techniques that sometimes you even need to learn and pick it up. So it's one big, learning curve.
We have the author and composer Jan Swafford on the show. He's a very acclaimed author. He's written books on Beethoven and Brahms and Charles Ives and the landmark books. And he's also a professor of conducting at a major conservatory. So we were talking about, he's like, when today's composers, there's no like one traditional way to compose. It's like taking the rubble of all the past composition schools, putting them together into a unique package. And every composer is like that. And I imagine it presents a lot of challenges when you're learning brand new repertoire from artists you may not know personally.
Yes, but it's always so fascinating. It's like every time you look at something brand new, and maybe this is what interests me so much. And then also, you can ask the questions. They can tell you like what it is all about. And on this note, for anyone who is interested, I'm absolutely delighted to announce that there is going to be a third round of the competition.
Oh, exciting.
So please do follow my social media or go into my website, and there'll be more information in just about a month.
That's exciting. And how many people have had participated these in the past? I mean, has it been growing? Has the interest been growing as you've been doing it for the third year?
First year we've got over 30 pieces.
Wow.
And then that's been quite a lot of work. And then the second year we've got over 66 pieces, which
That's
was fantastic.
Exciting. Wow. Yeah, as things grow, and I'm sure that people really must respond very favorably to seeing the videos and to seeing what the product is in the end. What are some of your favorite comments that have come out of this that have inspired you?
I think I am very proud that not only people who normally love classical music, they connect with it, but we had very many people saying, you know what? Normally I wouldn't listen to violin or I wouldn't listen to classical music, but I really loved your videos. And it's just easier for me to understand this. And I feel like, why not to try and connect with people and to create something that they're already accustomed to, like, something more visual. And it just, yeah, it's been extremely sentimental at times, but yeah, makes me very happy.
Very inspirational, certainly. I know I teach an introductory course to Western music to my students, and a lot of them come in with no knowledge of Western art music, and I have to really start from the ground zero, the ground floor. And I'm always amazed by, once they realize that it's not some distant art form, that it's around their lives all the time. I'm like, if you watch movies and you listen to film scores, it's always there. You'll hear Tchaikovsky in a sweeping love scene. You'll hear expressionistic music in a horror movie. All these techniques are derived from the master composers. I'm like, and if you learn to listen to them, you can hear them, and it's all, it'll deepen your life.
Absolutely. Music tells stories, and stories are about people. And then maybe perhaps this is also why it goes so well with movies, because then, it's storytelling. It's just from two different perspectives.
Bravo. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So, what are you working on right now? Do you have some concerts coming up in the near future?
I am very excited that when things are coming back into our diaries. One of the things I'm very much looking forward to is I will be performing solo with one of my teachers, Simon Standich. We'll be playing Sinfonia Concertante during English Haydn Festival. And there's also some other exciting productions like St. John's Passions during spring. And hopefully, I wish everybody out there, especially in the arts world, that things keep coming back because, we're ready.
Omicron was very tough. I did a pretty busy performing schedule in the fall, back to work again, and then things were slowing down in January because in December things were a little tenuous as Omicron spread like wildfire. But it seems like things are coming back now. So fingers crossed, these concerts go back to relative normalcy, and that we learn how to produce and to be safe at the same time.
Fingers crossed. I really hope things, come back for everyone because, people also want to go out there and experience things, and audiences are ready to go and see new things and listen to new music.
We have a question from the audience, and this is from Stefanos. He didn't say where he's from, but Stefanos asks, describe your practice routine now that you're in the professional career. Do you still practice the same amount of time as you did when you were younger?
Oh, I think in honesty, it varies. It varies what my day is like. If I have a big concert coming up, then my normal routine would be some open strings to work on the sound and come back to, nice sound producing for 15 minutes. Then I will do a few scales to work on the intonation and, I really like keeping my technique on a good level. Then if I'm really good, then I'm gonna practice an etude. It could be Kreutzer. If I want to challenge myself, then maybe a tiny bit of Wieniawski. And then you just pick up those difficult parts from what you're preparing for. Because it's so easy to serenade ourselves and play through the lovely bits. But sometimes you've just got to crack on those semi-quavers and, work on it. But of course,
the work part.
There will be days like when, you teach a lot and you're a teacher as well. So you know how, your diary fills up with these hours very quickly. So the amount of time just varies from day to day.
Do you teach at a conservatory? Do you teach younger students? What do you primarily teach?
I teach privately and my lovely students are coming to my studio flat for lessons and I teach all ages.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what's it like? As I'm a teacher as well. I conduct and I teach, and I just love both sides of the equation. And teaching has always been such an important thing for me. I love to when I perform, I love to bring that back to my teaching. Do you feel that same way?
I think that they're feeding each other. So not only I am a better teacher when I perform more because I play better and perhaps I've learned something from someone else that I can pass on my student. But also this connection, especially with those little ones who are so excited about the music and the joy that they bring into the room, especially when they've learned, they've been working for so long. It's incredible, the amount of happiness they bring to it.
Nothing like the energy of children. And I teach university students, and I just love their energy. They come. That keeps me young personally. I feel like a kid. It's not until my 22-year-old son comes in the room that I'm like, okay, I'm old. But
No.
but I don't think I'm old. I just like, I live a life in music. It's so delightful. I love going from project to project, working with colleagues, going to my university ensembles. It's just it's very rewarding work to work with young people.
Such variety, isn't it? Like so many angles, like you never stop learning.
And they ask such great questions. I teach conducting, and I just love to get the questions. I think, how do I approach that? That's a good question, and it constantly makes me re-examine my practice.
Yes, absolutely. Like you really need to be on top of your skills. At least I feel so that I need to know what I'm teaching. So first of all, I need to prepare it, in order to share it with someone else at the really high standard.
Another question from the audience. I love these questions when they come in, folks. So sure to be asking, but this is your chance to interact with these people. Who are some of your all-time favorite violinists?
Oh, wow. Okay, well, that's a tricky one. I think when it comes to classics and listening to the sound, perhaps that not so many people play with, probably Yasha Heifetz. There is this magical tone to it. Now, I also absolutely love some chamber musicians. So you can really listen to the best concerto from members of really good quartets. Um, I think when it comes to Baroque music, you can also learn from the whole ensemble. So if you listen to people from different countries, even they're gonna bring different, colors to it. But there's just so many. Like you go to one person and listen, like Isaac Palman, like you know, technically it's all just there. Hilary Hahn, I mean, perfection, right? But it's just like everybody just brings something different to it. So it's just so difficult just to pick one person.
I know that's what makes the music so interesting, and it's so subjective too. Which do you like this person's sound, and then it's like which repertoire do they play the best? Everyone's got their
Exactly.
repertoire that they focus on. So that's what I love about. There's just so many great artists out there to choose from.
Yes, and there is always somebody who brings something new to it. So you can never listen to the same Brahms sonata, or you can never listen to the same Mozart concerto. And then you listen to people like Alina Ibragimova, who played on gas strings, and even Mendelssohn concerto, then suddenly it's this brand new work. So, as many people, that many angles to it.
It's exciting. So what are the projects? You got upcoming concerts, and you've got your competition coming up. Anything else on the docket? And how do you balance your time between your busy performing and your personal? Like what hobbies do you have?
I think it's difficult to find that perfect balance. So at times you really need to plan in your schedule the time for yourself. That I definitely love spending time with, my relatives and going for long walks in the nature, but also reading books. If it wasn't for the books, like if it wasn't for the biography, if I maybe haven't discovered Zuzana Rzytkova, then maybe there wouldn't be any competition. So I absolutely love biographies. Like I've recently been reading Stanley Tucci's new book,
Ooh,
and you read about these people who are actors, sometimes they're sports figures, and they have that strength that just like helps them go through their life, and it's just fascinating.
there's so many perspectives. Yeah, I'm fascinated by sports too. I just think that's very interesting, and it often applies to what I'm doing at the time too, even though it's completely different mediums and art forms.
Yes, but just something different, right? That's gonna inform what you do. Just like something from absolutely different field.
I think we can always get inspiration from so many different places, and I think it's so important to not. Sometimes it's so easy to just be locked into your music and your career, but it's often I get just as much when I walk in when I'm guest conducting and I'm walking in a museum in another country. I get just as much inspiration, and it recharges my batteries.
Yes, absolutely. Like the first thing I did when I came to New York, I went to Met because then you're just gonna discover new things and you're just gonna suddenly open your eyes to something different and you're gonna see things in a different way.
Do you have any plans to return across the pond and perform in New York or in America?
I would love to. Sadly, like many other people, I've had some concerts cancelled. I was supposed to perform in Carnegie Hall that I was really looking forward to. and in LA and many other places. So fingers crossed. Hopefully one
Fingers
day.
crossed indeed, because when you do, you let me know when you're here. I want to hear you play live.
Thank you so much. And likewise, like, it would be fantastic to bring, your work over this side of pond.
Oh, I was supposed to do a tour and be in England for the first time. I was doing an opera in Italy, and I had a layover and went from Gatwick to Heathrow, and that was my whole London experience. And I'm a history fanatic, so what's older and more grand than London? So I'm dying to get back to England again.
Yes, the culture is absolutely here. Even the architecture, like sometimes when you go for work to a new corner of London even, and then you see these buildings and they always tell you the story of what happened, or at least they whisper.
Well, thank you so much for joining, Ada. And this is Ada Witczyk, and please check out her website. Once again, show us where can people go to find out more about your work, and do you respond to people on social media?
I would love to connect with everybody who would like to listen to my music. You can find me on my website, www.adawitczyk.com. So ADAWITCZYK, on which you will also find everything about my competition. And you can also find me by my name and surname. So Ada Witczyk on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And do check out our music films and let me know in comments what you think, because we would love to know.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Music Matters, and continued success in all of your creative endeavors.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to subscribe and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. Thank you so much for joining us, and remember, keep music alive.